Washington, the McLaughlin Group, the American original. For over 3 decades, the sharpest minds, best sources, hardest talk.
Issue 1, Hail to the Chief.
America, for all that we have endured, for all the grit and hard work required to come back, for all the tasks that lie ahead, know this: the shadow of crisis has passed, and the state of the union is strong. With a growing economy, shrinking deficits, bustling industry, booming energy production, we have risen from recession freer to write our own future than any other nation on earth.
President Obama delivered his 6th State of the Union address, urging an ambitious program of middle-class economies to the new Republican majorities in Congress. The Democratic president went big, bold, and liberal. Just watch how 38-year veteran of the Senate, Republican Orrin Hatch, reacted to the president's tax plans.
And let's close the loopholes that lead to inequality by allowing the top 1% to avoid paying taxes on their accumulated wealth. We can use that money to help more families pay for child care and send their kids to college.
The midterm elections were disastrous for Democrats. Republicans now hold majorities in both houses, the Senate and the House. Question: in light of the GOP majority, are the president's tax proposals serious policies or unserious posturing? Connie.
I think you have to see it as setting the stage for 2016, that he wants to make this be sort of class warfare. The president wants to paint the Republicans as a party of the rich and the Democrats as a party of a little guy. But it's not just empty posturing, it is also a statement of values. I thought it was interesting that his child tax credit proposal only went to families where both people were working outside of the home. He wanted to expand a child daycare credit that did that. So that's a statement of values, that he doesn't value stay-at-home mothers. That's not just political posturing. That's the president using this to say, this is what we stand for.
Oh.
Well, instead of coming in like a deflated Super Bowl game ball, couldn't resist that, he came in strong and positive and confident, and it's both policy and it's politics. There are some aspects he may get. I think Speaker Boehner said he's open to child care tax credit, and the president really turned the tables on the Republicans by calling for a tax cut on the middle class, and this is generally Republican turf. And what the president called for, child care, daycare, community college, raising the minimum wage, these are all policies that are very popular among ordinary, regular Americans that are out there. And I think it really puts the Republicans on the defensive. There may be some parts that they'll pass, but it's, as Tim said, it's mostly about setting the stage for 2016. And the economy is now strong enough that you've got Republicans playing on Democratic turf, talking about closing the wealth gap and talking about economic inequality. So we're in for some very fascinating debates.
Was this speech not so much starting a dialogue with Republicans, but starting a dialogue with the Democrats?
I think that's right. I thought it was interesting. I think the cameras were panning a lot to Elizabeth Warren during the speech, and that was a recognition on the part of the producers that, yes, this is much more on the Elizabeth Warren style of policies than it is with Hillary Clinton. So I think the president is doing two things. Number one, he is outlining his ideological viewpoint, actually, and to be fair to him, in a very honest way. The expansive state, taking childcare, college, retirement, across these range of issues, but at the same time, actually anchoring, I think, the Democratic Party as he comes towards the end of his presidency on the left. So, you know, it was a big, bold liberal speech, as you said.
Did you see anything in there that explained why the Democrats are losing working class citizens and followers?
No, frankly. What I did see in that, however, was the best speech that I've seen him give, period, full stop. It was a brilliant speech as a speech. The substance is a whole other matter. The problem with what he was talking about is it doesn't address what is happening in this country, which is the erosion of the quality of work. It's not just the quantity of work. You have today, if you take in people who are involuntary part-time workers, and you count them as what they really are, they're sort of half-employed, the real unemployment rate is about 11.2% according to the government. The economy is very weak, and he's got to find some ways to improve the economy. He had a lot of good programs in a situation in which you get past the issue of employment, but to my mind, employment and good employment is the key to everything.
Okay, the president also demanded money for infrastructure, which he says is crucial to America's economic well-being.
21st century businesses need 21st century infrastructure, modern ports and stronger bridges, faster trains, and the fastest internet. Democrats and Republicans used to agree on this. So let's set our sights higher than a single oil pipeline.
Question, isn't the Keystone XL pipeline eligible? Isn't it infrastructure spending? Mr. Carney, Tim.
Well, it is, but the problem is that the Democrats really, this is a rare base issue for them where they feel like they can't violate their base. President Obama has upset his liberal base on a lot of issues, and very importantly, there's a liberal billionaire, Tom Steyer, who provides a ton of money to the Democratic Party, and Keystone is such a symbolic fight for them that they're unwilling to give up on it.
Well, Keystone has been so elevated beyond its importance by both the right and the left, and the price of oil has now collapsed to an extent where it's no longer a good economic investment. We do not need the oil. And you have in Yellowstone River, you have an oil leak there in the river. People in Montana are drinking bottled water. I mean, that boosts the case of environmentalists that we don't need to be building another pipeline. So the president's got to veto it, and it's not clear that that the Senate can override them. I don't think they can.
Did you hear Eleanor say that it's been elevated beyond its importance, the Keystone Pipeline?
Yes.
Do you believe that?
Well, to some degree, I think that is true as an individual thing. But the problem is, it's not just about Keystone, right? The supporters of Keystone are not in favor of that just because of Keystone, but about energy infrastructure generally, right? That it could be one of many, that it could be one step on a development train that creates more jobs, that provides more energy security. I mean, the shale oil gas boom is the big one. But again, if we're talking about infrastructure, we're talking about upward mobility. Energy jobs pay well-paid salaries to people who are currently unemployed. So why is it somehow off limits?
You seem to be pretty good on this issue, right? The Keystone Pipeline. If you're so good, what is the geography of the Keystone Pipeline?
The geography of the Keystone Pipeline is from Canada.
From Canada. What part of Canada?
Nebraska.
Where does it go from there?
Nebraska.
Down to the Gulf Coast, right?
Through
the Gulf
Nebraska.
Coast. How does it get to the Gulf Coast?
Through a pipeline.
Through Nebraska.
A clean shot, one shot down? Does it go through several states? Do you know?
It goes through several states.
Which are the states?
I don't know, but Nebraska is one of them. The broad issue is
North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska,
down
Kansas, Texas.
Where does it empty?
Louisiana.
It empties in Texas.
Yeah.
And how many states are affected? And is it a worry for the environmentalists?
Well,
what is he concerned
the
about?
Native American communities are concerned about it.
The worry is that the pipeline will spill underground, and so one of the ways I followed this is Nebraska. There are landowners who don't want to give up their land because they're worried about it, and this is where, from a free market perspective, Keystone can rub you the wrong way. They're using eminent domain to take land away from farmers that farmers don't want to sell.
Are the positives of the Keystone Pipeline overwhelmingly positive?
Yes.
Meaning that they exceed anything on the negative side?
No.
Yes.
Just a moment.
I think that sort of prediction of the future of what the effect of infrastructure will be is exactly the sort of hubris that gets us into the big government trouble in the first place. I don't know.
Is he again playing to his base? In other words, it's an environmental issue with him, and he knows where his base is?
It's a symbolic fight. Yes.
You care to comment on this?
Well, listen, energy has got to be one of the most critical things this country is facing. The shale production has really transformed that world, but that's not going to go on forever. And this is something that is going to actually help the United States in terms of its energy production and independence.
You take this as a serious issue?
It's not an overwhelming issue. It is a serious issue. It's going to be a huge infrastructure investment for this country.
Are the intervening states worried about the environmental impact?
Yes,
this is
a lot
in Nebraska,
a lot of people are.
Yeah, in Nebraska there were a number of lawsuits, but they have been settled. Right now, I think it's the economics of Keystone. It's unnecessary. It does not create that many jobs, and under 100 permanent jobs. And infrastructure we need. We're way behind in infrastructure with bridges and highways, everything else. That's where the money should go. That's where the thinking should go.
Are you going to sit there and accept what you just said?
I disagree with that. I respect Eleanor's viewpoint on that, but I do think it's important for us to create energy jobs. I think it's a little easy for us to say we care about social mobility as long as it's the kind of jobs we like. I think we should be caring about economic opportunities, both at the macro national level and at the individual level.
We happen to be almost energy independent. We don't need more oil right now. Keep it in the ground. We may need it later. Save it for a rainy day.
Okay, foreign policy. The president was self-assured when it came to foreign policy, but again, Republicans were not impressed. Watch how Speaker of the House John Boehner, who thus far had been relatively expressionless, found this Obama analysis unbearable.
In Iraq and Syria, American leadership, including our military power, is stopping ISIL's advance. Instead of getting dragged into another ground war in the Middle East, we are leading a broad coalition, including Arab nations, to degrade and ultimately destroy this terrorist group.
And is President Obama right? Is his foreign policy working? Tim.
So the president is trying to really find his foreign policy. He hasn't figured out what it is yet. He does a drive-by war in Libya, and then he decides that that's a mistake. He wants to stay out of ground wars, but do these strikes. He is very hesitant. He's putting us halfway to war. So no, it's not working. He had pointed to Yemen as a great sign of success, and that's not in the past. Now that's not looking like a success. I don't think the president knows what his foreign policy is.
Eleanor.
A couple of months ago, everybody thought ISIS was going to run the table. They've now been halted for the most part in Iraq, and they've been rebuffed in Syria. I think that the president is correctly keeping us out of another ground war. It's hard to look at Syria and say it's a success, but I think the strategy is to keep it from getting worse. And what's happening in Yemen, the government there has been overthrown, but the Houthis, who are coming into power, hate al-Qaeda, and they're likely to continue the same anti-terrorism policy, fighting al-Qaeda. So it doesn't necessarily bode well for the administration because of all the chaos, but I don't think they're necessarily in a worse position.
This is a closing question on this issue. Why have people tuned President Obama out? His audience has fallen precipitously from its high point of 52.4 million in 2009 to only 33.3 million last year, to 31.7 million this year, and it's not technology. Such a dramatic drop is not explained by viewers using other hard-to-measure platforms like iPads to stream speech, because they've been around for about at least 10 years.
Well,
why is he?
We have an election every 8 years. He's 6 years in. People have gotten used to him. So I thought this was an excellent speech that he delivered, and they did disseminate it through social media.
He got 52 million in 2009. Well, he got 33 million last year and 31.
He was newly elected. Why don't you look and see what Ronald Reagan got the first year he was in office, and then 6 years in.
There was no comparable drop.
No, absolutely.
Oh, I don't know
absolutely.
about that.
Clinton and Bush, there was a drop-off.
He used Yemen as an example of what his ISIS strategy was going to be back in September, shortly before the Houthis took over, sponsored by Iran. So now we have Yemen in control essentially by, if not an Iranian proxy, a very proximate group to Iran, the isolation of American power there, the empowerment of al-Qaeda in the south. And so we're in a world of trouble. And the president thinks this is a celebrator. He said that Yemen was good. On the ground in Iraq, the spread of political sectarianism, ISIS advancing, continuing to hold vast areas of territory, abusing people. It's spilling into Lebanon and Jordan. The idea that this president's foreign policy is anything other than a joke.
Right. And we took our troops out too early in Iraq. We did not stand behind what we said we would do if Syria got engaged in the way it was. Our credibility in that part of the world is virtually eliminated.
I haven't heard anybody offer any credible solution other than what the president is doing. Everybody talks tough, but nobody seems to have any better ideas.
Empower the Sunni tribes.
Have you offered a credible solution to the president? You heard what the lady said.
I'm in Pat Buchanan's chair, so I'll say let's not get involved in wars that we're not ready to win and fight.
Issue 2, ransom calculus.
You now have 72 hours to pressure your government in making a wise decision by paying the $200 million to save the lives of your citizens.
$200 million. the ransom demanded by Japan by ISIS, the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, also known as ISIL, the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant. The terror group warned that failure to pay would result in the execution of 2 Japanese hostages. The $200 million figure is carefully chosen. It is exactly the same amount committed by Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe to underwrite the campaign against ISIS. Last year, ISIS videotaped its beheading of at least 50 hostages, including 3 Americans. The family of one such American, James Foley, was ordered by the U.S. government not to pay a 100 million euro ransom, about $116 million, which his mother, Diane Foley, and her family wanted to do. Mrs. Foley spoke to CNN's Anderson Cooper about the ransom.
We were told we could not raise ransom, that it was illegal, we might be prosecuted. We were told that our government would not exchange prisoners, would not do a military action. So we were just told to trust that he would be freed somehow, miraculously. And he wasn't, was he?
This behavior is not unique to ISIS. Terrorist groups of all ideologies have always relied on ransom money to fund their terror. But today, jihadist groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda use videotaped executions as an added means of extortion, and they've profited from this gambit. Multiple reports suggest many nations, including France and Germany, have paid tens of millions of dollars in ransoms to recover their citizens.
Why is ISIS so concerned about ransom? Tim?
They are acting like a country. I mean, people don't like calling them a state, but they're sort of like a state. They operate roads and towns and that sort of thing, and they don't have much of an economy. So they need to...
They've got a cash flow problem.
They have a cash flow problem, and they see the symbolic value with regard to the $200 million vis-a-vis.
What does it get most of its money from?
Well, they actually have a good cash situation, but they've got a lot of money from capturing banks and taking control. They get
some
money
selling oil.
Selling oil is one of it.
That's the biggest number.
But they also get money from alternate sources, private donors. The group are, capable, but the ransoms also serve a propaganda advantage in the sense of being able to advertise to people, come and join our cause. We're taking on the West. We're in control. They're on their knees, etc., etc.
Oil prices are plunging. That's their problem.
Boy, I'll say they are plunging. It is the biggest drop in oil prices that we have seen in our lifetimes in such a short period of time, and having a huge effect on that whole area. Frankly, a huge effect on our economy, because we are saving a lot of money for a lot of people because oil prices are so much lower, and they may stay that way for quite a while.
That footage you showed is really chilling, of the beheadings and people awaiting their fate. Mr. Foley's mother is correct when she says that under U.S. law, they would have been vulnerable to prosecution if they had tried to ransom their son. I doubt that any jury would have carried out any punishment, but that is the policy of the U.S. government, because if you give ransom, you only encourage more. And so far, and the Japanese have apparently paid ransom in the past.
I think this time, they haven't. But the problem is, it's not just saving someone. It's a deferred death payment, right? You are paying for someone else to die, because they will use that money to go and, as we've seen in the video.
But if it's your loved one, you're willing to tweak the law a bit.
And that's why I'm not going to criticize Diane Foley, but the government has to take that.
Yes, the government knows that if you stop the payment of money, you will reduce the incentive to kidnap these people. That's a huge issue for a country like the United States.
Here's what I have here. Should internet firms be legally prohibited from helping to publicize ISIS killings by letting their services be used in netcasting, pleading hostages, and beheadings? You follow me? Is it a form of enemy propaganda?
We have freedom of speech in this country, but I would say that everybody ought to, out of decency, not carry that propaganda. I mean, I don't even know if I would show the B-roll clips that you're showing there of some of this. If it is carrying their propaganda on TV over the internet, I think that is helping them, and I think out of decency you ought to avoid it. Because of the First Amendment, I don't think legally you can prevent it.
I thought seriously about putting that up
Yeah.
And I decided to go with it because it's been on so many times before. Maybe there is a built-in resistance.
You've got to show people what they're like. Boko Haram, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, ISIS. You have to show people that it's a battle of ideas, right? And if you don't... And
how
as much
serious
as
are their financial problems?
Actually,
ISIS is in good shape.
They're the most well-heeled terrorist group that we've ever known.
Yeah.
Issue 3, the universe comes to Florida.
This Sunday, the 2015 Miss Universe pageant will arrive in Doral, Florida, adjacent to Miami. The pageant was acquired in 1996, 19 years ago, by real estate mogul Donald Trump. The gathering ladies will be judged on their 1, beauty, 2, intellect, and 3, quote, plans for making a positive difference in the world, unquote. The city of Doral believes the pageant will reap long-term economic benefits from hosting Miss Universe. It's costing $2.5 million. But some insist that beauty pageants are a sexist anachronism. Here's what Sally Alexander, who protested the 1970 Miss World competition, told the BBC last year.
Our argument was with, why do you have to be beautiful and, looked at like this before you get noticed as a woman?
Sally Alexander's protest was certainly noticed, especially by Bob Hope, who hosted the 1970 competition at London's Royal Albert Hall. Today, beauty pageants remain controversial. In 2013, the Miss World competition in Bali, Indonesia, was met by protests from Islamic fundamentalists.
Question, do beauty pageants have a place in the 21st century? Eleanor Cliff.
They seem a little anachronistic, but they really have modernized it, and some of these women are really formidable. Not only are they beautiful to look at, they have brains, and they do have causes they care about. So I'm not ready to write off the beauty pageants. I think they're here to stay.
What do you think, Bart?
I think the exhibitionism of women in that particular form is absolutely not something I would support, unless it takes place in my living room, in which case you're all invited. I mean, it's been a part of American entertainment really for so long. I don't think it has the demeaning dimensions of it.
Well, we have all kinds of contests. We have rodeos, we have pie eating contests. I have a list here. The Iditarod, we have muscle building competitions, athletic contests of all kinds.
Beer pong.
So you have no problem with...
No, I think if people want to watch it, fine. It's not something I'll be watching, but...
Well, are you too high-minded?
No, no, I don't mean that. I just mean I wouldn't find it interesting.
You would not?
No, it took me a while to get into American football because I hadn't grown up watching that, right? And so that shocks people. But it's up to the individual. Well, if the women want to participate, if the event wants to happen in Doral, let people do that.
Oh, let me try this out on you. Miss Universe and international relations.
Look at this photo. It was taken as the Miss Universe contestants arrived in Doral. The lady on the left is Miss Israel, and the lady in the middle is Miss Lebanon. This sparked uproar in Lebanon, where Israel is quite unpopular. And so, Miss Lebanon issued a rather unconventional apology, quote, "Since the first day of my arrival to participate in Miss Universe, I was very cautious to avoid being in any photo or communication with Miss Israel, who tried several times to have a photo with me. I was having a photo with Miss Japan, Miss Slovenia, and myself. Suddenly, Miss Israel jumped in, took a selfie, and put it on her social media," unquote.
Question, is it likely that Miss Lebanon fears retaliation by Hezbollah if she appears too friendly towards Miss Israel? What?
Yes, I think that's exactly. I think she's already been condemned and really trashed in her home country when they saw this selfie come out there. So that just tells you how, in a sense, how intense the hostility is towards Israel.
If she is seen as legitimizing Israel, then she better watch out.
Any particular contact with Israelis or with Israel is absolutely condemned in most of the Arab world.
You think the Olympics is far more nationalistic in overtone than this kind of a contest?
Oh, no, of course, this is, look, the Olympic tradition is something that has been around for a very long time and is a very unique and widely accepted kind of, shall we say, presentation of countries' abilities and talents. This is something that has just come up in the last century, more or less, and it's a different kind of event, I would say.
Well, and if these two women were probably left to their own devices, it would be wonderful to have them pictured together, but you have to respect the culture that Miss Lebanon comes from and the kind of backlash that she's going to get. It's against the law there.
For a culture that's
well,
I think we have to have the opposite.
I have to respect her and the situation she's in. That's what I'm saying. I'm not defending their attitude.
Two young women. I think it's easy for us to condemn Miss Lebanon, but the political pressure in that situation shows the political rot.
Prediction, Tim.
The New England Patriots will be so distracted by Deflategate that they will lose the Super Bowl badly to the Seattle Seahawks.
There will be backroom maneuvering in Saudi Arabia because after the death of King Abdullah, his half-brother at 79, who is ascending to the throne, is considered not up to the job. And so there could be repercussions for U.S. policy, including the price of OPEC oil. So turbulence in Saudi Arabia.
Interesting. Tom?
Even though in some ways they've tried to control their impulses towards aggression, the Iranians will exert pressure in the coming days in Yemen to try and push the United States out. They sense an opportunity, and the Iranian theological project in the long term requires American absence from the Middle East.
We're going to do Yemen next week. Mark?
The Republican Senate and House will completely overhaul Social Security disability, which has gone up 6 times in the last number of years, despite the fact that we've had a much lower rate of issues of...
what will be the upshot?
There'll be a dramatic reduction in it.
Yeah.
Dramatic reduction.
My prediction, despite China's assertions at the Davos, Switzerland Forum, its economy is in free fall. I predict true economic growth of 4%, not the 7% that China claimed, 7.4%. Bye-bye.